Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Great seeing this wonderful crowd at this hour of the day. So I'm Alex. I work as a PM and researcher in StarkWare. And today I'll be talking to you about AppChains. First of all, just to let you know, you're missing out on great talks by Ilya on decentralization. And this will be a bit similar to Gidi's talk yesterday, but I'll talk about more of an overview of what AppChains are and what can be done with them and where are they going in the near future. So what are AppChains? Basically, unlike L1 and L2s that we all know and love that run a variety of contracts and applications, AppChains are more dedicated to a specific use case and are built to do this use case very well. So AppChains are not a new idea, but something that is gaining more traction, and we'll see how. So they existed for a while, but really made more popular and first-class citizens with the Cosmos and Polkadot systems. But StarkX has also been quite a popular variety of AppChains. So we have DYDX that are doing trading, Starware for NFTs, and ImmutableX for gaming applications. So these are great use cases where you want something to be very efficient, do it really well, and not necessarily anything else, but be very good at that. So you're an application builder. You want to think, OK, how am I going to deploy my application? Should I just deploy a contract, or should I use an AppChain? You might have these considerations to prefer an AppChain. So first of all, maybe obviously it's scale. So even with L2s that are really good at expanding the capacity and throughput of the network as a whole, even L2s like Starknet, they still might have the same limitations as L1s. So when there is high demand for block space, fees might still go up. And you, as someone who has an application on L2, might deliver a worse experience to your users than if demand only goes up when it is happening on your AppChain. Second is customizability. So you might not like the tokenomics or the consensus protocol of the specific AppChain that you are using, of the network that you are using. And by building an AppChain, this is something that you can play with, right? You set the rules, you set the fees, and how everything plays out. And the ecosystem is more of a point of why wouldn't you deploy your own L1 or completely separate network. So by building an AppChain, you're still hooking into some infrastructure that does exist within the ecosystem that you're building on. Right? So if it's Starknet or StarkX, you're still hooking into Ethereum liquidity, etc. You don't need to worry about some of these things. You already have some of the toolings, which might not exist if you build a new L1. Of course, not all cakes can be had and eaten. So some of the limitations that have traditionally existed with AppChains, we'll go over some of them. So first of all, security. So traditionally, you had to amass validators that will validate your chain. They will need to lock up stake, lock up some funds, which also reduces capital efficiency. And once the TVL of the network becomes high enough, it might become a problem. You might have a majority stake attack. So not perfect unless your AppChain is really popular. Second is composability. So by design, the AppChain was meant to run this one thing really well. So you won't be able to interact with other contracts that exist on the same network easily within the same transaction. And for simplicity, although you do have some of the benefits of the ecosystem, it is still more complicated than just deploying a new contract. So pros and cons for AppChains, but the purpose of the talk is to see how by building them on validity rollups and on Starknet, you can gain the entire stack mainly building on the security of the L1, on some composability or interoperability of layer 2, and gaining all the benefits of the scale of the app chain on its own. So for security, with recursions and with Sharp, proofs can be submitted to Starknet, in this example, if Starknet is a layer 2, verified there. This gets verified on Ethereum, and then you have your app chain on L3, but you gain the security of Ethereum without any need for mass capital locks. Composability. So yes, it is not perfect in the case of AppChains. You still won't be able to make a flash loan from Aave and execute it on a DYDX. But you do get a lot from running it as an L3. It will be possible with better bridging, better tooling, to move funds around between app chains quite cheaply, right? If now it is rather expensive, you need to withdraw things, go to Ethereum, pay high gas fees for both withdrawals and moving to a new app chain. When everything happens through the layer 2, both validation is much cheaper, and as if validation is also cheap and there is enough demand, it can also happen much faster, right? So not as long of a wait between these transfers. And this also solves the problem of, yes, there can be LPs on both sides that help you move funds, but if you are the LP, now you gain the security of the bridge, much more capital efficiency when moving between your app chains. And finally, for simplicity, frameworks that are going to come up, and some of you are going to build them, that will make this a one-click affair to spin up a new chain that will do exactly as you want and all the features that you want. So ideally, we'll build, like in the vision of where app chains are going, we'll have a way to mix and match all the features that you would like to execute, and we'll see some examples later. So you'll be able to choose your execution engine, choose whatever consensus that you want to use, and whether you want data availability to happen on L1, on L2, etc. So some of these are already available, and some of these are going to be experimented with in the near future. So StarkX as an L3, already something that is in the works. At first, it will be validated on L1 and message to L2, just to gain from the aggregated proofs that Sharp is producing, but later just as proofs on L2. Custom Starknet, also not something that is available to all, but an option, running a Starknet instance that is only dedicated for a specific app. And another interesting aspect is running something that will be proven directly with the Sharp prover. So this is interesting, something that also is not available yet, but there is a talk later for work that is being done on that. Basically, you run Cairo code, execute it on Sharp directly, and there you can implement any logic that you want, including your own execution engine, your own VM, etc. So things that can be built with these tools, on-chain gaming that will move not just assets as things that live on-chain, but the entire gaming logic. On-chain AI, you can have inference that will happen and be validated and proven on-chain. Interesting things we can think about how oracles can use this and your idea to build. So again, interesting space to watch. Some of these apps are already building some of these ideas. For example, running Kakarot, a super interesting project that you might have heard about, as a VM, as an L3. It's going to be executing Ethereum code, validating it on Starknet or Ethereum directly. So thanks, Aviv, for the meme. with the power of sharp and the recursive proving, you might think, why shouldn't I build L3 of my own? Thank you. Follow us. And if you have questions and you're building in this space, building infrastructure for AppChains and L3s, or building L3s that are only possible by building them as an AppChain or proving them to sharp, then come talk to me. Thank you. I think we have time for questions. Yes? Uh-huh. So you mean the first step, when it's going to L1 first or later? So that would depend on how much you want to pay, right? If you're running this AppChain on your own, it's whenever you want to make the proof. But yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on traffic and the cost. Obviously, the more proofs you aggregate together is going to be cheaper. But it's semantics. Like, it's not something that is concretely defined. If there is demand for higher throughput, lower latency, it's something that can be done. Yes. Yes, exactly. So this is exactly like building one big L2 with all the apps on it. Obviously, we want to make L2s and Starknet scale well and be able to execute as much as possible on it in a secure and cheap way. But as I said, there are some other things that you might want to consider, like running EVM code, right? Not necessarily something you can do easily with pure Cairo. You might want to make some adjustments, maybe some other things, tokenomics, and tailor it to exactly what your users need. Yes?
In practice, who's expected to visit their base, like especially with like, what's the competitive edge against like the Polygon edge or the Avalanche edges or the Cosmos edges?
So obviously, yeah, it's not the only place where L3 is happening, which is good. Competition is good. Some of the advantages that we mentioned is, for example, the security, right? You get validity proofs either to L1 or on L2, and that means your execution is correct and provable, regardless of how much do validators stake, right? On an AppChain on Cosmos, this is something that can happen if validators decide together to be malicious. So that's one example. Yeah, I mean, and there are AppChains that are already running, like DYDX, which is super successful, which is a good example of who can find this useful. Okay, thank you.
We build it.
You built it. Yes. Yes, it's that. Okay. Thank you.